of the land, the sort of open market value of the land? Because I see the figure here on page 178, 179, an indication of its open market value, which I was quite surprised actually at the value that's noted there. But how realistic is that, given Councillor Cheadle's reminded me of the situation with the access? But on that page, 178 and 179, and the reason for my question is financial implications to include reference to value for money. So when I read that the sites potentially are worth between 150,000 and 170, I have to balance all the benefits of this sort of natural regeneration, which I totally support, with my resources hat on, the opportunity, potential opportunity to realise or dispose of an asset for that sort of capital receipt, which possibly could be used to invest in other capital projects, which may well satisfy public need or indeed generate revenue, whereas probably this project doesn't. So I'm just really interested in, that market value, the lack of access, and how, officer view on striking that balance between the benefits of the project and the potential to realise a capital receipt, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll get that on. Thank you, Councillor Evans. So the assets team had a red book valuation done on the land, which was on the premise that it was disposed with no additional constraints applied by the council. So, i.e., the maximum value it could realistically achieve. Land prices are high, and they're actually reasonably large sites. So that's why the total amount of cost in there, or opportunity cost, is an amount that's worthy of discussion in a meeting such as this, and I'm glad you brought it up. So that was a piece of the jigsaw on the table for officers when we were considering how to meet the strategy before us around biodiversity and about carbon sequestration, something that will come into much sharper focus in the years to come, and isn't yet, because at the moment, in terms of counting our carbon as an organisation, it's quite embryonic days, but soon we will get to the point where the low-hanging fruit has been done, and the value of that carbon will become much more apparent. So I think at the moment we're probably not giving that the weight it deserves, but at the time, and still, officers believe that this is we recognise the opportunity cost that will not be realised if we don't sell the land, but we believe this is the best way at the moment to achieve other corporate priorities and aspirations. But I do recognise that there is a choice, and this is why it's before you now. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. Does that help at all, Councillor Edmonds?
Yes, it does, and I thank Mr. Brooks for his explanation. It's an interesting point, and it's somewhat of a dilemma for members, isn't it? We all want to achieve that corporate priority, I think you called it, but at what cost? And I guess for me, it begs the question: what else could we do with that capital? And perhaps we need to consider how we could use that, and perhaps to make it clearer, that could have been an option in the body of the report, so that we had greater awareness of what the options are with regard to this project. I welcome the project fully, and I was fully with the reports until I got to that point, but also understand that we have a duty to our taxpayers to demonstrate value for money. And particularly as the lead member for resources, I felt I could not pass the opportunity to raise it for discussion.
Can I respond to that?
Thank you. Yeah, please respond.
I think Councillor Edmonds has got to the question. We declared a climate and biodiversity emergency in 2019, and because of COVID, we've had to delay what we've done. This is a really good project. It enables us to meet our aims, and also in an emergency situation where we're facing the degradation of our natural environment to a huge degree, this is one way that this council can address that problem. And I think we've had those pieces of land for many, many years, and probably they've been forgotten. And to a certain extent, that we've not really done anything with them. And I think we need to do something positive now, and something to show our young people that we are serious about the climate and biodiversity emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Any more questions? Councillor Lee. I'll come back to you.
It's just as anyone like to start I wonder if anyone has thought of a hybrid here, instead of just letting it rewild itself with some maintenance. Some of this land is very wet. Has anyone looked at planting willow and therefore getting a cash crop as an income from that, and in the fullness of time putting the right trees up so you can actually coppice it and again make an income from it rather than just let it go wild?
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Members, we're still in questions at the moment, so we'll move on to debate a little bit later. Sorry, I'd missed the question. Is there a question there that you can answer, Mr.
Yep, two things, I think. So I draw you back to the purpose, really, and the reason both these sites are geographically so useful. They're both within priority areas in terms of nature recovery. So the Forestry Commission has highlighted these on a map, saying these are fantastic areas in terms of trying to grow the area of adjacent deciduous woodland, which is a priority habitat. So that would be where our focus would be, and nature recovery would fulfil that. I'm not sure planting willow, whilst useful, and I can see some benefit there, wouldn't necessarily be consistent with the sort of woodland we'd be aiming for. In terms of hybrid approach, then that's perfectly acceptable and may well prove to be the approach we take. So if we find that natural regeneration doesn't take off as we anticipate, then we probably would put in a little bit of formal planting, namely to hit the targets that we would need to hit under the Forestry Commission grant and also the Woodland Carbon Code. So there's a low requirement, but there is nonetheless a requirement for a certain amount of natural regeneration. So we could top it up with formal planting if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Skula. Councillor Cheeley, you have another question.
Yes, unless I've misunderstood it, we're not proposing to dispose of this land. It remains in our ownership. So the point that Councillor Edmonds made about its capital value, it still remains as an asset on our books. It's just, instead of being a field, it's a woodland. Have I got that right? Okay.
But we could realise the asset. The alternative is to sell.
I think well, you could do, but you still can later if that's what you choose to do. It's not that we're giving it away to anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Got a question from Councillor Wood online. If I could bring Councillor Wood in.
Hello everyone. Sorry, I put my hand down again because I thought it might not be a question, but I just wanted to say that, you know, actually, from my point of view, this is an opportunity for us as a council to be real leaders in this rewilding process. We, it's really important that we show people, as Councillor Daniel said, you know, exactly how serious we are. And I think for me, I think, you know, Councillor Edmonds, you bring up some really good points about finance, but I think this is well beyond money now. And this is more about what we can do to show that we are really serious about our climate and biodiversity emergency. And I'm sorry, that's not a question. Sorry about that.
Councillor, I think could have made it a question. The answer would be yes, it is an opportunity.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, members? Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Lee. Hello. Yes, it's going. Thank you, Leader. Yes, I fully support this proposal. I think it's fine. But my only concern is the clearing of the bracken, which is, I think we all know, is pretty carcinogenic. And my concern is the safeguarding the clearing operatives. Thank you.
Mr. Secura, I mean, we can be assured, I think this will all be done correctly and appropriate risk assessments and so on will be carried out.
Yeah, I won't add to that. It's been some years since I've cleared Bracken myself, so I'm a bit rusty. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, can I ask Councillor Daniel to move the recommendations?
The recommendation is that members note the proposed way forward to deliver natural woodland regeneration at council-owned sites at Harrowbeer Lane, Yelverton and Bedford Bridge near Horrobridge.
Thank you. Could we have a seconder, please? Councillor Cheadle. Members, we're now in debate, so if anyone would like to make any debate on this subject, Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, Councillor Edmonds brought up a very good question earlier about the values. 5 years ago, I would have said those values were ridiculously high. £4,000 to £5,000 for land for growing timber. Last year, we had some ground sold in my parish at even greater figures than here. Nearly 100%, probably 100% higher. And these are people who wish to re-wild ground. And then they had the temerity to ask a grant from FIPL to help them do it. But, you know, that's fair game. These grants are open to everybody. You can get replanting grants. They're very, very good. And there's a lot of free trees available as well. But I just throw that hand grenade into the pond. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other debate, members? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Leader. I welcome this project in principle, but I do have concerns over the bracken control. Having grown up on the Duke of Bedford estate, who grew a huge amount of timber, the biggest worry for them when we had a dry summer, a dry autumn was the bracken dying down and the fire risk. And if you do not control bracken in the early stages of rewilding, you're going to have big problems, because once it becomes established, it takes some getting rid of. And although Councillor Crozier said that the trees will get rid of the bracken, it will take a very long time before that happens. So we need to be aware that, you know, the bracken needs strict controlling early on, otherwise we will have problems many years down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I wonder, Mr. Secula, I mean, we're obviously taking advice from the really expert people in this field and people who've done this sort of project many times. I guess we'll be taking their advice at every stage and adapting our approach if and when required. Would that be the case?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the grant scheme recognises that if intervention is needed either at the outset or in terms of maintenance, it does financially compensate you as well. So those management methods are available to us and would be funded if they're needed. And I recognise members' expertise on this and experience over the years. I've seen sites where natural regeneration is coming up through bracken. I've seen a site recently in Plymouth. But equally, you know, I've read research which says that bracken suppresses tree growth as well. So I do appreciate the points members are making. They're perfectly fair.
Thank you. So it's really just to reassure everyone, it's not us just leaving this to carry on. We will be keeping an eye on it and we will intervene if and when necessary. Councillor Leach, Councillor Daniel.
Can I just say that we will be bringing regular reports back to council, to various committees, to let you know on the progress and what we're achieving. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mott, did you want to add anything to the debate?
Yes, sorry, because it's kind of technically a bit of a question under the carbon credits and things. My apologies that I was a bit slow on that one. If we are being paid for the carbon credits, who then effectively owns those carbon credits? Would we own those, or would the Woodland Trust?
The Woodland Trust, effectively. So we wouldn't be able to put it against our own carbon footprint if we went down that route. The Woodland Trust, I think, have all kinds of funky relationships with big national companies that need to offset their footprints. And I think they're probably actively encouraged to enter agreements where they can for new woodlands. So we wouldn't put it against our own footprint. We could legitimately say that we've created or facilitated the capture of so many tonnes, but it's not something we'd be able to put against our own footprint.
I think then I would want to register my concern if we were going down that route. I would rather see that we as a council use those to offset our own footprint and look to reduce our footprint, because we should ultimately be encouraging companies to reduce their footprint and to manage their affairs better, rather than just offsetting them while we all continue to globe-trot around the world.
I think the point that Mr. Secure made earlier was that it was a pragmatic decision to go down that route in terms of the likely costs that would be attached, as I understand it, to recording those ourselves. But I take your point, Councillor Mott. Any other debate, members? In which case I think we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation?
That's 8 in favour, thank you, Leader.
Any against?
With 1 against.
I would like it noted, though, Chair, that is only in the proposed working of the credits, and I'm not against the scheme at all. I am fully support of the scheme, but I am against the proposed carbon credits.
Thanks, Councillor Mott. That's fully understood. Thank you. If we could move to item 12, which is a request for a statutory designation of land and a new long lease at Milton Abbott allotments. If I could ask Councillor Pearce to introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, officers and members. The Council has been approached by the Milton Abbott Allotment Association to consider a lease of 25 years for an area of Borough Council-owned land in Milton Abbott to use as an allotment site. The land is thought to have been previously used for allotment some time ago, with one allotment plot having been retained and tended by a neighbouring resident for at least the last decade. However, other than the single plot, the land has not been actively managed for some time and is covered in brambles. The Allotment Association hoped to offer 6 large and 2 small plots at the site, as well as similar raised beds and a communal polytunnel. As well as smaller raised beds and a communal polytunnel. Other options for the land are limited by a restrictive covenant upon the land relating to use for the purposes of the Housing Act. Given the previous use of the land and current aspiration of the local community, this report also takes the opportunity to formally designate the land as statutory allotments. The community proposal would make good use of the land, serving a need in the local community, and will be consistent with the plan for West Devon, including the strengthening communities, enhancing community well-being, and natural environment themes. Committee members are asked to support the recommendations to formally designate the land as statutory allotments, and to authorise the heads of assets to progress and conclude the new lease with the Milton Abbott Allotments Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce.
Take questions?
Yep. Any questions, members? No questions coming forward. Councillor Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask: is there do you know that there is a need for allotments amongst your local residents?
Yes, a significant interest, I understand, has been given to us, but I can ask Rob Secure to back that up as well.
I may well ask Councillor Joy, but yeah, as I understand it, the Allotment Association have tested local appetite, and there's significant local interest for allotments. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sekila. Councillor Mott.
Can I ask what are the long-term implications of designating it as statutory allotments as opposed to just allowing them to be allotments?
Mr. Sekila, are you able to answer that one?
I'll have a stab, but I've also got Fiona Shearer next to me, conveniently, who can probably provide a more useful answer. Statutory allotments bring protection in terms of planning legislation and change of use. Effectively, it brings it a higher level of protection. That's probably about as far as I can go, Fiona. Do you want to?
It does also bring with it statutory restrictions in terms of rent controls, notice periods that allotment holders would need to give, and as Rob alludes to, restrictions on the ability to build. But that's really about the sum total of the statutory restrictions.
Yes, Councillor Mott.
Can I ask then who would effectively be running and
who would be running and who would be responsible for the collection of rents and the obligations therein on that land, please?
So that would be all defined within the lease to the allotment associations, but it would be effectively handed over to them, including the existing tenant that we have. They would take responsibility for that tenant as well.
So we are in effect gifting this land?
Correct, yeah. We were talking about a peppercorn rent or a rent holiday for the first year and then £100 thereafter per year.
Councillor Crozier.
I wonder whether they considered getting the parish council to take over the lease and for them to manage it as a responsible body.
Yep, that was my very first response, and it fell on deaf ears, and that hasn't been progressed. I think the Allotment Association tried their luck as well, to no avail.
Yeah, I know approaches have been made to the parish council, and it's not been something they have wanted to take on. But there are some very keen people in the village who are really keen to move this forward. So, Councillor Crozier.
Yeah, there are advantages with the parish council taking it on because Biffera's parish council has got a large number of allotments, around 100. We produced another 12 2 years ago, and we still have a waiting list. We do have a little bit more land, but we're encouraging those who are not making use of their allotments or great use of the land to give them up and let others come in. And it is a management function. We actually lease them from the Devon County Council rather than from West Devon Council, the land. They did try to apply for building on those a few years ago and were rebuffed very robustly.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Leader. I feel that in my own mind it's better if West Devon retain control of these or oversee the allotment association. Bear Ferris are very fortunate. They have a very proactive and progressive parish council in place. But over the years, I've seen where parish councils have not retained the interest in items that they should have done. And one only has to look at the number of allotments in Tavistock, which now have houses on them. And some 30, 40 years ago, it was, the way of when allotments weren't being used, well, we'll build houses on them. And I think with having a statutory designation within West Devon protects it for as long as one can see in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cheadle.
Could I just chuck in a red herring? Not that herrings have got much to do with allotments, I know, but we had a similar situation in my ward, and it turned out that the land was contaminated with arsenic. Have we a responsibility, if we are the landlord, as it were, to make sure that the land is fit for allotments?
Yeah, I would have been bringing this item to you about 18 months ago if it wasn't for looking into contamination. So I similarly had a site on behalf of South Hams that I looked at in Totnes where I had exactly that issue. So we have looked at this site, both in terms of historical mapping and environmental health, taking a look at it as well. So yeah, we're confident there's no history of contamination at this site.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, can I ask Councillor Pearce to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Leader. I move the recommendation as set out.
Thank you. Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Daniel, thank you. Members, any debate? Councillor Wood would like to come in online and add to the debate, I think. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, debate or question, whatever. Anyway, hello everyone again. So yeah, I think this introducing allotments as a statutory provision is actually really important. And you know, we've Councillor Ewings earlier on in the meeting was saying about the rising costs of energy, but the rising costs of food are really affecting people now. And I think us as West Devon Borough Council, we should be providing people the opportunity to be able to grow their own food, because it's not only about growing their own food, it's about community, how people interact with each other. There's a lot more to growing food than just simply growing food. You know, there's a lot of research about mental health as well, and how that's positively affected by growing your own food and interacting with the soil and understanding the sort of food growing and sort of food produce systems. So I would absolutely support this if I was voting, but I'm not. Anyway, there you go.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. I think, yes, you make some interesting points, and I know that one of the drivers for this is the community aspect and getting people together and well-being and involving children in the village and the village school as well are ideas that the group has got. So there is very definitely a community aspect to this.
Thank you.
Any other debate, members? Councillor Mott.
I hope the parish council appreciates what we've done for them and that they then don't have to provide these allotments, as is their statutory duty, should the enthusiasm be there within the ward.
Thank you, Councillor Mott. I'm absolutely sure they do. Any other debate, members? In which case, can we move to a vote? All those in favour of the recommendation?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. If I can move to item 13 on the agenda, the Local Government Act 1972, Section 109, Kelly Parish Meeting. Just bearing in mind what Councillor Cheadle said earlier about management speak and jargon. Nicely sums up this item, I think. The paper in front of you relates to the creation of the Milton Abbott, Chillerton and Kelly Neighbourhood Plan. In the course of review, a technical issue raised by the examiner when the plan was submitted to him, revolving around the powers of a parish meeting, which is how Kelly is administered, compared to the powers of a parish council. In short, a parish meeting cannot be a qualifying body, nor can it give consent to the parish being included in a neighbourhood plan. Somewhat unfortunate this has come to on notice very near the end of the process, but nevertheless, there is a solution. That solution is that the District Council may make an order under Section 109 of the Local Government Act, granting the parish meeting relevant powers. And that is what this proposal seeks to do, and support would enable the progress of the neighbourhood plan to continue. Members, are there any questions about this report that's in front of you? I'm not seeing any, in which case I would like to move the recommendation. And the recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that the head of legal services and monitoring officer is authorised to make an order under Section 109 of the Local Government Act 1972, granting Kelly Parish Meeting the power to consent under Section 61F of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to the whole of its parish being included in the Milton Abbott, Chillerton and Kelly Neighbourhood Plan. If I could have a seconder, please. Councillor Leach, thank you. Members, any debate? Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Leader. Over recent years in dealing with neighbourhood plans, we've had some very interesting things coming out of the woodwork at times. But this one beats the lot. I don't think any of us expected something like this to happen. So it's one continues to be educated each year, no doubt about it. But anyway, I think it's a very sensible way forward, and it gives the residents of Kelly to be involved in the neighbourhood plan. So I think it's a no-brainer, quite honestly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I know you describe it as interesting, which is one word, I suppose. Councillor Edmonds.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm pleased to say that Kelly Parish falls within my ward, so I'm particularly keen for this to be approved. So that the good people of Kelly who've participated fully in this process for the last 8 years should not be excluded at the 11th hour. So I'm sure members will want to support this so as that Kelly can play a full part in the future in the neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other debate, members? In which case,
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Crozier.
Have we got any other villages in this state of flux?
I'm not sure. I don't know whether Mr. Fairbairn is sure. I suspect following this, there may be one or two that emerge from the woodwork, but I'm not sure how many parish meetings there are.
Sure. If my research on this point leads me to the conclusion that Kelly's unique within the borough. We've not been able to identify any other parish meetings. I stand to be corrected, but my understanding is that Kelly could well be the only parish meeting, which is absolutely great. It works well for them, and they have some of the powers of the parish council in it. They are a consultee for planning applications. They get a small precept, etc. But they do not have a parish clerk. There is no paid clerk. It's a volunteer. And anyone who turns out at the meetings gets a vote. So it's quite a good system. So yeah, I understand, unless David can correct me, that this may well be the only parish meeting in our borough.
Thank you. So as far as we're aware, Councillor Crozier, no. Okay, any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. All in favour?
That is unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. And on that interesting, I think, Councillor Pearce, as you called it, note, I draw the meeting to a close. So thank you, members, for your contribution, and officers, and yeah, good result. Thank you.